He had a loaf of Warburtons on his lap, sat in the driver's seat of a parked car in Southsea, Hampshire. Not a stash house, not a hideout. Just a plain black vehicle, engine off. Next to him, Gary Cranny, one of his trusted managers. Seconds later, the doors were pulled open. Body-worn cameras caught it all. Anthony Siner, the man running one of the UK's most embedded drug lines, was boxed in, surrounded, and arrested without warning. But he wasn't the only one behind it. His older brother, Brian, was already serving time, locked up, but far from out. From inside his cell, he oversaw another line of the operation. Together, they ran the Scouse Dave line. For over a year, it didn't miss a beat. Class A drugs moved fast, in and out of South Coast towns. Names changed, numbers disappeared. The line stayed active. For months, police traced the calls, watched the cash flow, and followed the drugs from Liverpool to Hampshire and Devon. They didn't just take down dealers, they collapsed the entire structure. And when the police finally moved, they moved for the whole thing. This is how it started to fall. Long before the name Scouse Dave meant anything in Gosport or Plymouth, the Siner brothers already had weight back in Liverpool. Brian came up first. At 18, he was caught in a petrol station burglary. Minor job, but it opened the door. Within a few years, he'd gone bigger. By 2003, he was jailed for running a stolen car racket fronted by a fake dealership. Over £1 million in vehicles moved through that garage. It looked like a business, but it wasn't. Anthony followed the same path, but faster. By 2008, he'd been hit with an ASBO for inciting violence, threatening bouncers, and making noise in Liverpool's club scene. But the real work was quieter. He was watching, learning, and understanding how power works, not through chaos, but control. The brothers didn't care for flashy jobs. No smash and grab, no stunts. They built slowly. Brian stayed sharp, clinical. Anthony was louder, more reactive. But he played the long game. Every mistake made them better. Every arrest, every loss, every close call, all of it fed into what came next. By the early 2000s and 10s, they weren't foot soldiers anymore. They were organizers. They had runners, safe houses, and trusted people. A complete system. But systems attract attention. Police clocked their names, rivals watched their moves, and Liverpool started to feel tight. If they stayed, it would only end one of two ways, inside or underground. So they pivoted. If Liverpool was oversaturated, they'd build something from scratch. Far enough from home to dodge the heat, but close enough to control. They headed south, 200 miles down the map, and they started again. When the Siner brothers expanded, they didn't just bring drugs, they brought a system. In early 2022, they launched what would become one of the UK's most embedded county lines operations, known on the streets as the Scouse Dave line. The name wasn't random, it was branding, a message. Within months, it dominated the heroin and crack cocaine trade across Gosport and Plymouth, shifting over 34 kilos in just 12 months. This wasn't street-level chaos, it was engineered. The brothers built it like a franchise, mapped out, layered, controlled. Each zone had its own chain of command. Gareth Roberts was on transport, drugs and cash flowing between Liverpool and the coast. Adam Hughes and Gary Cranny ran operations on the ground, and at the very top, the brothers split the map. Anthony ran Gosport from the outside. Brian, still in prison, and we'll talk about him later. This was more than dealing. It was logistics, supply chain, cash flow, punishment, control, everything you'd expect from a functioning enterprise. Except it was built to traffic Class A, and for a while it worked, but what made it effective also made it visible. Text blasts left trails, courier runs showed patterns, and every rap delivered brought the network closer to collapse. The line was busy, the money was moving, but the system was starting to crack. As told earlier, Brian Siner was already behind bars. But prison didn't slow him down. It sharpened his control. While serving a 14-year sentence for drug supply offences in Liverpool, Brian wasn't just another inmate. He was operating quietly and precisely from inside his cell. Outside the walls, people moved when he said so. The Plymouth line answered to him. Orders, pickups, and movements, all coordinated from a prison bunk. This wasn't guesswork. Brian knew the system, knew the risks, and ran his half of the empire with discipline. He stayed in contact with his brother Anthony, who managed the Gosport branch. They oversaw daily operations, cash transfers, and the flow of heroin and crack into the south coast. In Plymouth, Adam Hughes made sure the product moved fast and clean. Nobody worked off script. The line didn't stop for setbacks. The Scouse Dave line didn't move like a gang, it moved like a business. But even the cleanest systems leave traces, and this one left a trail of noise. In Gosport and Plymouth, the shift was slow at first. New faces, unfamiliar voices, thick Scouse accents on quiet corners. Then the calls started. Overdoses, fights, the occasional knock on a door that didn't belong. Police took notice, so did the locals. Behind closed doors, a multi-force operation had already begun. Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary led the charge, supported by teams in Merseyside and Devon and Cornwall. No headlines, no loud raids, just quiet pressure, applied methodically. Phones were flagged, cars followed, local intel was gathered in pieces. Bit by bit, a picture formed, and the brothers were at the center of it. Then came the break. In November 2022, a car was stopped near Plymouth. Gareth Roberts was at the wheel, a known courier. Inside, 3 kilos of heroin and crack. It wasn't just a seizure, it was the crack in the foundation. Roberts' phone opened the door, call logs, locations, links back to the line. From there, the work intensified. Trap houses were placed under surveillance. Even inside prison, the signals changed. Brian calls were no longer clean. By early 2023, detectives had the full chain mapped. Names, phones, roles, movement. The system had been efficient. Now it was compromised. And they were ready to shut it down. At 6 a.m. on July 2023, silence ended and the takedown began. After months of surveillance, digital forensics, and coordinated planning, police launched a multi-county raid targeting every arm of the Scouse Dave line, from couriers and trap houses to the very men who built it. Teams moved simultaneously across Liverpool, Gosport, and Plymouth. Doors were kicked in. Officers in balaclavas stormed flats. Stashes of Class A drugs, burner phones, weapons, and over £30,000 in cash were seized. What once operated like a business now looked like a collapsed corporation, with every executive, manager, and foot soldier rounded up. Anthony Siner was arrested in Southsea, Hampshire. He didn't make a scene. Plainclothes officers moved in. No chase, no resistance. But inside that vehicle were phones. And those phones told the story. They linked Anthony directly to the Gosport line. From supply runs to cash pickups, to everything. Back in Liverpool, police knocked on another door. Brian Siner was already serving a 14-year sentence. But this wasn't about his past. This was about what he'd built since. He was pulled from his prison cell by investigators. He wasn't being moved, he was being questioned. Intelligence pointed to him now running the Plymouth line from inside, and a search of his cell confirmed it. Hidden inside were 2 illicit mobile phones, both active, both connected to the wider operation. On them, encrypted messages, contact chains, and instructions to associates outside. The content placed Brian not as a bystander, but as a key controller in the network's daily activity. For detectives, it was the final proof. The line wasn't just operating, it was operating under direct orders from inside. Now both brothers were exposed, one pulled from a car, the other from a cell. And the line they'd spent years building was about to snap. Other arrests followed quickly. Gareth Roberts, the courier whose earlier arrest had first exposed cracks in the operation, was among those re-arrested. Adam Hughes, Gary Cranny, and Lee Richardson, all key figures in the management and distribution side of the network, were taken down during the same sweep, each pulled from carefully monitored addresses in the early morning chaos. In one flat, officers uncovered a hidden compartment behind a kitchen panel concealing £60,000 worth of heroin, evidence of the gang's meticulous concealment tactics. Meanwhile, at another address, a 19-year-old runner made a desperate attempt to flush wraps of crack cocaine down the toilet before being physically restrained by police. By the end of the day, 17 key figures were in custody, and for the first time in over a year, the phones went silent. The Scouse Dave line, a machine that once operated around the clock, had been completely dismantled. By early 2024, at Portsmouth Crown Court, the Signer brothers and their key associates sat side by side in the dock, the architects and operators of a drug empire that had stretched from prison cells to coastal streets. After months of building a case through surveillance, intercepted calls, and seized devices, prosecutors laid out every step of the operation in painstaking detail. The evidence was overwhelming. There were no denials, no elaborate defenses. One by one, the gang members pleaded guilty. Judge Sawyer summed it up with one line that echoed across the courtroom. This was a professional, well-organized enterprise that exploited the vulnerable and ran on fear. Brian Signer, already serving time, was sentenced to 17 years and 7 months for his continued leadership of the Plymouth supply line from behind bars. His brother, Anthony, who controlled the Gosport side, received 15 years and 9 months. Their lieutenants were handed down significant terms. Lee Richardson received 9 years, Adam Hughes was jailed for 8.5 years, and Gary Cranny for 7 years. Max Pike and Clayton Donnelly, both instrumental in logistics and street-level operations, were sentenced to 5 years and 7 months and 4.5 years, respectively. Others received community orders or suspended sentences, depending on the extent of their involvement and the evidence of coercion or exploitation. But the message was clear. The justice system had come down hard on every tier of this organization. In total, over 74 years of prison time were handed down. The empire had collapsed, not in a blaze, but under the full weight of the law. What do you think about a drug empire being run from behind prison walls? Should the Signer brothers have received even harsher sentences? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this case as shocking as we did, hit that like button. It helps more people discover these real UK crime stories. And if you want more cases like this, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. We've got more unbelievable investigations coming every week. Stay safe, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next story.